Gun trash stunt cuz, yeah you know that's us. Where we only speak the real and the real rock with us. Where we motivate the people and politic on success. Oh no, we ain't DJ Khaled, but they swearing we the best. Gun.
What's happening? It's Contrast Uncut. I gotta give a huge shout out to Uncle Snoop's Army and Bobby D Presents. I appreciate you brothers. It's your host Xylo, and ladies and gentlemen, today we have an incredibly dope special guest. He's from Southern California, east of Los Angeles, San Gabriel Valley to be exact. He's a decorated and celebrated record executive and A&R. He's a senior vice president, head of A&R at Red Bull Records. He has over 25 years in the music industry, rooting back to Mike D from the Beastie Boys to an illustrious career discovering talent and utilizing his ear to change talented people's lives with their gift. In his career, he has signed the likes of Wiz Khalifa, Terrace Martin, Wondergirl, Imprint, and Blxst, just to name a few. I personally was blessed to meet this brother on set of a Blxst shoot and have been on him since about coming on the show, and today we're making it happen. And if you don't know who I got on the show by now, it's all good. We get all episode to chop it up with the man himself, Kenny Tick Salcido. How you doing, brother?
Good, my guy. Good seeing you, man. Pleasure. Honor to be on this show, man. Honor.
It's a blessing. Like I was telling him off air, there's only been 2 people I've been really hounding. I shouldn't use the word hounding, but following up, being persistent, being consistent, and you get results. And it was a tie between Lake and Generation Now and Tick with Red Bull Records.
Honored. Man, come on. Just a blessing. I just, to be up here, you know, be talking about my life and how I get a chance to work with amazing talent, amazing execs, and you know, just to be in the conversation and to talk about great people. It's amazing.
Amen. Amen. Like, as you know, time's the most finite thing we have on this earth. I got to tell you from the jump, I appreciate your time rocking with me, rocking with the viewers and the listeners. Thank you.
Honor. Thank you.
Speaking of time, Tick, what's a normal 24 hours for you?
My G, it's wild. I think a normal 24 hours, I think about people who do what I do, right? Other A&Rs, and it's like, I think we could all relate to this. I think it's a 24/7 job, and I know nowadays we always push mental health forward. It's something we could all talk about now. Right. We all talk about, you know, it's good to work out, it's good to meditate, it's good to do all those things, but sometimes, you know, being in this type of business, it's 24/7. It's a lot of work because we are servants of the art and the artists. You know, we work with them and work for them, and we want to push them forward. So we always got to be on call, you know. So in every day is, you know, you wake up. I do try to do the basics of like whether it's, you know, a meditation or just thinking about how I'm grateful for things. Think about my team. Think about what that day lies ahead. Even if I'm just laying in bed for 30 minutes, I'm just thinking, all right, this is what's ahead of my day. Almost like some of my favorite people are athletes and musicians. You know what I mean? I think athletes and musicians are all about manifestation, even if they don't want to believe it. Even if they don't want to believe they all are. You know what I mean? Nice. And a lot of the people on my team are former athletes, and I think the people I've partnered with are former athletes, and they really do have this skill set inside where they just sit there and they're kind of like, okay, this is what lies ahead, and they're going to take every punch that comes at them, but they're also going to throw every punch back.
You got to look at how music and sports are related.
Oh, completely.
And the synergy that's based upon both, that the common denominator is that they both have a competitive spirit. Mm-hmm. When you're in, you know, a band and you want to make it to first chair, you just don't want to be in the back, and you want to work your way up so you can be seen and heard from your talents. Mm-hmm. Same thing for sports. You just don't want to ride the bench. You want to get on the field. You want to get on the court. Mm-hmm. Yes, you want to do everything you can as a team and build us together. Same thing for the band. Because, hey, if you're on point and everyone else isn't, your beautiful sound let us know you're on point, but the rest is off. We got to fix that.
That's real. No, that's real. I mean, my favorite sport's boxing. I grew up following it. Both my grandfather and my other grandfather obsessed with boxing. Obsessed, bro. Like, so I'm like an encyclopedia of it. I love it. And I think boxing and music are hand in hand. They just are. It's a metaphor for life, you know, getting knocked down, getting back up, losing, taking some L's, getting back up, pushing forward, making adjustments as you get older, or you know how, you know, people always ask, how do you have longevity in this business? You make adjustments. You know what I mean? Some people say you work. That's real though. That's real. You know, how do you make these adjustments? Your body changes, your mind changes, your outlook changes. Certain things you could get away with, you know, you probably can't anymore physically, but you can make those adjustments. Say, okay, how do I do this so I can still keep up and run a 9 a.m. meeting or an 8:30 meeting and still be at the studio. Maybe not as late as you like to be or you used to be, but enough just to be present and understand the sonics of what's happening. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I hope that all,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? So like my everyday is like, I get up, I start moving. I'm already moving by like, my headspace and everything's moving by like 7 a.m. Like I'm already, in my mind, I'm already going and already seeing what the day looks like ahead. I'm thinking about, I reach out to my assistant, I'm reaching out to the office, I'm thinking about, I look at the entire roster, I think about my team and what's on their plates, and then I start rolling out calls. And it's calls throughout the day, it's emails throughout the day, set meetings, studio visits. It always varies, but it's always those constants. It's always constantly working with my partners who are managers or producers or artists or attorneys. My A&R team, who I work closely with, who are more than a team, they're my partners. I lock in with them and we're across the entire roster. And so it's a lot of work.
A lot of people don't understand what it takes to make a dream a reality. A lot of people can sit on a couch and have their own antics and criticism of what's going on. But the reality is they don't know what it takes to do what you do. What it takes to see the beautiful roster that is developed here at Red Bull and seeing how they're flourishing. And that is because they have a man like you 24/7 around the clock, making sure not only is he on point yourself, everyone else is on point. And you're positively building them. And that my friend, is a gift. It's a gift. And you're applying it. And as you're applying it, you're also recognizing that it's a bigger picture involved. You can't say longevity unless you realize how big the picture is. And you realize the development of certain people in your team keep the picture going, not only for the moment, but for history, for their sake, for the people around them. As more as you pour into each soul, that soul takes that energy and pushes it forward, pays it forward, because you paid it to them without even noticing.
It's, it's wild. It's crazy. A lot of images popped in my head as you were saying that. Like, I think about the execs I work with every day, who I think are amazing. I think about the artists I've been able to be around, who I think are amazing. And as they progress in their careers individually, right? Even producers that I've put on early by accident, you know what I mean? Because I just like them, they'll remember like, bro, you were, you were my first placement, or you helped me get my first placement, or that connection you made, that intro you made changed everything. You know what I mean? So when you get those, I think that's more than money. That's more than a plaque. I think for an A&R, that's how, that's longevity. You know what I mean? That's how we, it's just such a magical and amazing thing. You can't equate it. You know what I mean? Of how these artists come in your life, how you meet them, who makes the introduction, how you co-sign them or sign them, and you get them out there. It's a blessing. It's a blessing.
There's a word that we're not saying. I normally talk about it later, but right now it's relationships.
It is.
It's a relationships will get you places money cannot. And those relationships you build, they help you build a bridge that you didn't know you may come back, and it's already built for you because they continued the message. And that's just a beautiful world we live in.
It's amazing. I like the way you said that. I really do. I like the way you said that. That resonates with me a lot.
No, it's it's coming from passion and experience. Yeah, life throws you a lot of curveballs, and then it makes you roll with the punches. But I just say, try not to get beat up. Keep going.
Goes back to boxing. Try not to get beat up. Yeah.
I got a quote. Let me know how this quote relates to you, or if it doesn't, the ideas I want you to talk about it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's get it. Only do shit you believe in. Russell Simmons.
It's an amazing quote. I think it's amazing you brought that up, because I think it ties to a lot of things in my life. I think I could have chose a lot of different paths. Being, I'm first generation music. No one in my family was in the entertainment business. We didn't even have a reference point of it. You know what I mean? Like my dad, military. When he got out of the Army, he was a store manager. He managed a grip of supermarkets. And he's a genius. My dad was a genius. He just never got a chance to really become a school teacher. He wanted to be a history teacher, and the man could read. He has a whole library of books. I remember just books. He was always just reading, and he was a G, man. Like my grandfather, hardworking dude, played. Like I said, my grandfather played amateur baseball and boxing. Those were his things. My grandfather, and he was tough. He was tough on my dad. He had, my dad was one of 9. And when my dad would have to go to the school, like go to school or walk to school, my grandfather would buy the local kids cigarettes or a 6-pack and say, make sure my son Henry can go walk down the street. So my dad had a different, growing up, it was a very old school, put your head down mentality. So he educated his mind. And he just was super, super smart, well-read, articulated shit. And I think watching my dad pushing that narrative of high school, college, very militaristic. I mean, he had one day off. He worked 6 days a week. On Wednesdays, he'd wake us up, be like, look alive, look alive. Like, that was his energy. Look alive, look alive. And it's crazy, bro. Like, he had that crazy, wild energy that I think I inherit. You know what I mean? You inherit that energy.
Come on.
But wild enough, and it's kind of heavy looking back and talking about my dad. I think my mom, very artistic. She can draw, she can doodle, she can pick up. I think you could give my mom any instrument or a piece of paper, and I think she could do anything creative with it. She was a true artist, right? So how crazy is this, right? So my mom, my dad, kind of infused together, bring forth.
Genetically effective, because look, you have this hard-working heart mentality. You're gonna work from your heart so that you deliver everything you have inside of you whenever you work.
Yeah.
And then you have this artistic, passionate side where you're very creative and you're very effective.
Yep.
Because military, if you guys don't know, and never talk to your family members, them men and women, they don't play. It's organized, it's to the T, and they're trained that way. And that's great, each his own, but it develops an organizational skill that if you don't have, is put inside of you.
You know what's crazy? I thank you for saying that. I agree. And I think growing up as a kid, seeing my mom and dad work so hard, I wanted to be a journalist. I was in my head a lot. I wanted to write to be blunt, I wanted to write for the Source magazine. That was my dream. I wanted to write about rappers in the Source magazine. That's the truth. That's what I wanted to do. And I just couldn't meet anyone. I didn't know how to do it. So, that quote by Russell, ironically, only do what you believe in. I live by that, crazy enough. And what's funny is Russell was responsible for the Beastie Boys, who are my mentors. That's why I think it's odd that you chose that, or not odd, I think it's kind of amazing that you chose that quote, because weirdly enough, it does resonate with me. Because growing up where I grew up, you look at it, San Gabriel, Alhambra, Montebello, Monterey Park, ran around Santa Fe Springs as a kid, ran around Pasadena as a kid, Alhambra.
The area he's talking about, if you guys don't know, that is where 18th Street, all these horrified Mexican or Latino gangs were developed, and they were running rampage. So as he's telling these stories, you guys got to understand the dynamics of where East LA was at and where it was going.
Yeah.
And you were able to be a diamond in the rough. Be able to make sure that your parents kept your foundation solid so that you knew you were a diamond.
Thank you for saying that. A lot of, it's crazy. I was speaking to I've only a select group of people kind of realize that, Zylo, like where and how I grew up and what it was back then. And even if you were just artistic, like I had a friend of mine in high school who had an MPC drum machine, and he was just a real artistic cat, DJ'd. And that's who I was running with. But at the same time, you go to backyard parties, and it didn't matter what color someone was. Those parties were wild. And at the end of those parties, there'd be gunshots. At those parties, that was pre-social media. So, like, you look at that as a kid going to high school, and shit's getting shot up, and you're just kind of like, okay, like, how does this all, like, what, like, do I stay doing this? For, like, do I stay in these areas? Like, what do I do? So, weirdly enough, I do think, when I look at this quote, I could have stayed and just got a job like the way my dad wanted me to, and got married and just stayed where I thought my parents wanted me to be. But I just had, it's weird, I had inner bigger dreams that I just didn't realize I had. And I manifested meeting Mike D from the Beastie Boys for my internship, and moving, going to Atwater Village, which was still wild at that time, pre-yoga studios, pre all that shit. Still wild, Atwater Village. And going to Atwater Village, meeting Mike D through my first people that got me in there. Shout out to Bob Mack, shout out to Miwa Okamura. who internship there, and then Mike D took a liking to me, and I think he was the missing link in my life, and he showed me the music business. He showed me pretty much there was a whole world out there beyond San Gabriel Valley, beyond the bubble. I had to think about this, you know, without social media back then, I had no idea there was a world beyond where I was living. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in every society, to from that.
Well
unless
said.
you traveled, you didn't understood what went on in other areas. I mean, it was a point in time. Sorry, you know, I be having a street conversation. There was a point in time you could get arrested in the valley and get released and get arrested in downtown in the same day and they wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Because the systems were so delayed versus now.
I didn't even think about it like that. That's fucking, that's wild, but that's kind of like, think about that, a different time, you know, and you look at it now and it's amazing, but looking at this quote and saying this quote, not for a long-winded story, but it just, me working with Mike D from the Beastie Boys as an intern, working a night, you know, going to night school at Cal State LA, working a day job, going to Grand Royal as an intern, and then sweeping floors, doing whatever I could, because I wanted to penetrate something outside of what I was used to. Because I knew there was light at the end of the tunnel. I just didn't know what it was. You know, I didn't know if I wasn't trying to be an artist. I wasn't trying to do that. I was like, I wanted an avenue to be around this music world, and Mike helped me shape it and figure out what I wanted to do. Whew. Crazy, right?
He put that fire behind you where, hey, this is the shit I believe in and I'm doing it.
That's exactly it. He showed me, if you really look at the Beastie Boys, and if anyone hasn't read it, it's called the Beastie Boys book, you should get it. What's amazing about those dudes is they created their own environment. They had a record label, a clothing line, a magazine, and a studio, all in Atwater. So I used to run up and down the steps of the studio, up and down the steps, and with a 7-Eleven soda, big old, you know, that would get on the corner of, I think it's Hyperion. Yeah, it's Hyperion and Rowena. It's a 7-Eleven, it's still there. It's a Rowena. it's on Rowena and Hyperion, and I would get a 7-Eleven, big old, super big old, and I would get that every morning like a little savage, and run up and down the steps of their record label was downstairs, studio was upstairs. I'd be running up and down the steps, and they would laugh and say, you know, everyone at Grand Royal and Mike and the Beastie Boys would be like, God, you're so bugged out and hyper, you're like a little tick. And that's how the name stayed. And that's how I got it. I was 17, and I loved it, bro. I was in my late teens, and it was magic. It was getting that nickname from them, from Mike D, was from that crew was amazing, bro. It was a dream, you know. And it gave me not only the name, but in a weird way, it gave me a persona. Actually, it gave me like this thing that I thought, okay, to this world, at home, in San Gabriel, East Los Angeles, I'm Kenny Salcido. With this music world, I'm Tick. So it gave me this, almost this way to identify, like, okay, I could be something else here. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, because at that point, you're hungry for it, but you don't know where the drive is going to take you.
Well said.
And as hungry as you are, it led you to your path, and people recognize that, hey, he's different. His clock is ticking a little bit different, and he's moving a lot faster than the rest. Yeah. A lot of older people like to tell younger kids like that in like sports world, hey, slow down. You're making me look bad. I got that a lot. That was your gift.
That's my gift.
Trust me, I've been going through it for a long time where I will bounce around and do everything everyone else is doing, and then I find that people don't like me, not because we have genuine conversations, because my work ethic is harder than theirs. And then it creates a rift in just being genuine.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but at the same time, you have to be able to understand your gift.
Thank you for that. No, I agree. I've been blessed. You know, I've been blessed to navigate. But yeah, keep going, man. I'm sorry for the long-winded.
No, it's all good. Talking about the music game, entertainment world. Did the game choose you, or did you choose the game?
You know what's wild? I think the game chose me. And funny enough, it happened. I think growing up as a kid, where I grew up, I had a real, it was a tough home life and a tough upbringing, but at the same time, I grew up, you know, Catholic as a kid. I went to Catholic school. I always prayed every day. I always had that in my mindset. My dad was a military guy. My mom prayed every day. She was very spiritual. And I think I was around that a lot. So I remember being a kid and not really realizing I manifested it, but I actually, now with time and education, and being around other spiritual people in this business, right? People who do what we do. I believe it chose me. I believe it was destiny. It was fate. Because how would a kid at that time from San Gabriel Valley, East Los Angeles, meet one of the most iconic artists in the world by accident? It was fate. It was meant to be. I was looking for something. I knew then, at the time, my older brother had left LA to go to the Bay Area to go work, to find work. So I didn't have an OG. I didn't have an older brother in the age group to look up to talk about. You know, when you're in your late teens, you're talking about girls. You're talking about, you're talking about friends. You're partying. You're doing wild shit. You know what I mean? So I didn't have anyone older to relate to, and weirdly enough, I think that became Mike. That actually was, and I had prayed for that. I said, because it wasn't my brother's fault. He had to go move and find his life. I just needed something. I needed my dad worked a lot. I didn't have really a male father or big brother figure, role model. Better word, role model. I think that became Mike. In that era, he was making Hello Nasty. That was the era I met him, and it was an amazing album. But meeting Mike and his band and being around him and watching him do A&R, think about this. I learned A&R from my big brother. I learned A&R from an artist. That was my first entry point in A&R, as opposed to learning A&R from an executive first. And then later, I had to learn how to do it from an executive. And you find many mentors.
You can definitely. I got told this a few weeks ago. Shout out Logan from Basewood.
Oh no.
Something that he told me was that certain things you can teach. You can teach tech. I could teach you executive, but I cannot teach you culture. I cannot teach you how that ear works for you.
No.
So how an artist can relate to you, how much that means to them, and how they can articulate to, you feel me? It's a blank canvas. The producer puts their paint on there, leaves room for the artist to put their voice on there. Now we have a beautiful piece of painting, and from there you recognize that, hey, these components go with each other, and that is a gift from the ear. And it's like sometimes people. The reason why I do this show, because so many people are afraid to cross that bridge to success. They think that, hey, it's hard over there. I don't know how this person got on TV. I don't know how this person got on the speaker. I don't know how this person, whatever their dream is. And because they don't know, they are basically going to become that kid that does what their parents do. Go work in the grocery store. Go work in the mall. Go work at Target. Go.
Thinking about going to work for a bank. I was thinking about going to the Army. Work at one of my dad's markets, go to the Army, work at one of my dad's markets, or literally, honestly, work at a bank. One of those things, or one of those things. Like literally, I was thinking about the Army for real, because my dad and my grandfather did it. You know what I mean? So I was like, that's all I knew. You know what I mean? I didn't have any when I heard about cats doing acting or music, I was like, I didn't even think. Because think about this too. I thought about this the other day, Zylo. This is something somebody put me on the other day. He goes, back in the day, the way me and many people looked at artists, we couldn't see them every day on social media. So I didn't see one of my artists that I grew up looking at, like the way my little niece who's 13 can look at an artist and she sees them every day on IG. She sees them waking up with sleep in their eye, tired, yawning, no makeup, a tired artist, talking, and she's like, wow, I could relate to that. Where me, I saw them only on magazines or on video shows, BET video shows.
It was exclusive.
And you only saw them you saw them in prime time. You saw them performing. They looked fly. You were like, oh my God, like they're gods. These artists are gods. Every one of them, from Dr. Dre to NWA to Beasties to any of these artists, they were gods. You watched them only when they had to drop the record, right? So you never saw them at their most candid or worst. So that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Exactly, because that was like a resource. It was like a privilege to understand how certain things work.
Yeah.
And because your manifestation, even though you didn't realize it, you put the work behind it. And that made you arrive. So many people get in the air and, hey, I'm headed somewhere. I'm a post. I'm headed somewhere. And they're starting their new journey, but they'll make a U-turn midway and never talk about it again.
Yeah.
Versus you have people that put the work in and they arrive, because prayer without hard work is dead.
I love that.
And you decided that you weren't going to let your dreams die.
Yeah.
and you know you got that work put in. Like I had a moment where I was a kid. My stepdad worked for ELS, which is an electric lighting service company out here in LA. They did all the award shows, premieres. I got to meet BB King as a kid. Didn't know who he was. He was sitting down on a big old chair.
You met BB King,
Bruh,
most
3 times.
iconic.
Three times.
Yeah. I wouldn't even know what to say to BB King. I feel like
I'm a kid, and all I see is just
BB
a big brother sitting on a chair, and it's like, hey, why do you get to sit on this chair on stage?
Yeah.
That was my first question. Not knowing that who he is, not knowing he owns the House of Blues, where we're setting up and taking down these lights. And it went from the first conversation, it was like, hey, he's a different type of young man.
Yeah.
To the next time that he got done, he was looking for me.
Of course.
And I didn't know who he was until my stepdad told me, like, you know, you used to just talk to BB King? Like,
Crazy.
for real?
Crazy.
And then it's like, oh, I do remember that. Because, you know, it's not too many times you go inside the House of Blues and there's a big old chair in the center of the stage and a guy's sitting there laughing with a deep voice and you can vividly see it. And then I was just curious, like, what does he do? Why does he get to sit up there? And he was so transparent, he told me. But the difference between me and you, I was just always looking for that again. Not to understand my path. Not to understand that, hey, if I can talk to someone that they can read my aura as a kid and I'm that delightful to someone that reads millions of people, there was a gift inside. And I just didn't, and I just kept on going. And, you know, I've had a big passion of trying to live other people's dreams to help them reach their dreams, and instead of doing my own.
I love that.
And so
I love that. No,
going.
hearing your perspective, it's amazing hearing that, especially as a young kid. You're right, for somebody like BB King he touches millions, right? To see something special in a kid and say, like, hey, bring him over here. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, artists are magic, bro. Artists are.
My stepdad was this buff-looking Chuck Norris, country music listening, call my rap music jungle music, just to be
on that energy. Wow,
like that.
That's fucked up.
And I grew up where like it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
Like I will tune him out. I'm gonna go do what I want to do, but I'm also gonna help him because he is providing. So I will help out, and then I'll go do my own thing. And, you know, that was one of those situations. And my own thing led me to go across the street when Space Jam first came out. Instead of being on this side of the Chinese theater, I went across the street to Greco's Pizza to get a slice of pizza. They let everybody out. I missed my chance to meet all the celebrities and basketball players.
There you go, though. But it was meant to be.
Come on. Come on. So, I want to know, what was your first confirmation that being an A&R is what you're supposed to do? Because you had this early introduction from Mike D as an intern, and you're bouncing around being hungry, and then he's showcasing you from a talent and an artist perspective. But those guys, they were culture driven. They controlled their narrative, and they controlled how they were seen. Yeah. And those two things are the most iconic things you could do in that era, and they controlled it.
I love that question. I think it's a brilliant question. It's funny. I could touch on a couple of things for me when I knew it. I think A&Rs, like athletes, no matter men, women in business, we're always, whether we want to admit it or not, we're always looking for validation as an A&R. You're always looking.
Creatives are always.
We're always like that. Artists, you know, listen, even the greatest artists are always privately pushing to always be relevant. And A&Rs, as much as I never wanted to admit that and be like, oh, fuck, I'll just do what I do, you deep down, you got to be in front of the action. You know, there's an amazing movie. It's one of the Rockies where Apollo Creed says some shit where he's like, you know, we're the warriors. He goes, without some damn war to fight, we might as well be dead. And I thought it was such a great line because it's like A&Rs. I think, you know, I plan to do this till I die. I really do. And I think, and that's a blessing. I think it's a gift to do A&R. We're privileged to do A&R, to work with artists. But going to that question, right? The first time I ever felt validated, truly validated, even though I was in rooms with Mike D, and Mike was like, I'd see him talk to artists about mixing. He'd let me hear about his mix notes, and I thought it was amazing to hear an artist give mix notes and critique other artists' mixes as well as his own. It was magic to watch him do that because you hear it because he had such a crazy, incredible, eclectic, but really incredible ear that you just were like, wow, I'm not even hearing it the way he's hearing it.
But his sonics
were so crazy,
he
right?
Could hear when something's out.
Oh no, I was like, what is he hearing? Like, I don't, you know, I couldn't keep up, you know, and it came with time, right? But watching that, right, being in that room, I always felt I'm not worthy. Like the way all athletes, you know, the way all A&Rs feel, oh my God, what am I, you know, can I do this job? And as time went on, when I was truly validated, I had met a young A&R, true story. Later on, after Grand Royal, I had already like started scouting. I went over to a label called DreamWorks. I started working with Rico Wade from Organized Noise. Shout out to my man Orlando McGee, OG Dungeon Family, the guy.
Legendaries.
Legendary. And even in rooms with like from Beasties to Organized Noise to, you know, being in rooms with Q-Tip and just being around people, I was like sitting there going like, could I even still do this? And after all that, I was in a really tough label job. Culturally, I didn't fit into that label. The label was signing just, you know, just really overly produced, commercialized music. I just didn't feel good about the major label I was in. But out there, I'd always strived to really know what the streets were talking about. I always strived to talk to the people that were really doing it. And we had some great A&Rs at that company, you know, Quan Prather, KP, who's amazing, Dino DeValle, who was amazing in New York at that time. And being a kid out in New York, running around between LA and New York, bunch of friends of mine had told me about a young A&R named Sycamore, who's now a legend, but Sycamore was a mixtape DJ at the time. He was young, he was a kid, he was like 18. And I sat with
Tastemaker.
But so y'all know Sycamore, so I meet a young kid named Sycamore who made me meet him at a place called, it was this place called the Coffee Shop on Union Square. He loved it. He loved going there. It was kind of like a diner, like kind of reminded me of what we have in LA called Swingers, but it was called a Coffee Shop. He loved it. So we go over there. He tells me about a kid named True Life from the Lower East Side. And he played me the music. And True Life had a record called The New York. Yeah, The New York. And Sick put it on his tape, and everyone from Green Lantern to Ninth Wonder were loving True Life. True Life had the streets. And for you all who don't, like, True was an incredible artist then. I know he's still helping out artists now, but what was amazing about this is it was my first ever bidding war. It validated that not only could I trusted a great A&R like Sycamore, who wasn't officially an A&R to major label. I trusted the streets. I trusted a cat who was touching culture. He tipped me to the artist. I identified it. I was willing to put my job on the line, and I got into a bidding war. It was between Sony Epic and Def Jam at the time. Jay-Z was the head of Def Jam, and Jay-Z beat us to the bidding war. But the fact that I came that close, and I was competing against legends, the greats. And you know who made one of the hit records that actually got True Life's buzz up? Terrace Martin.
Wow.
So in New York City, I'm in New York City running around, and I meet a fellow LA guy. Came up around the same time, Terrace Martin, and we just geeked out on drum machines. I'm a big gearhead on drum machines. I love them. I collect them. I have like MPC.
I've read the article that you did. I was like, there's not too many areas where you can find interview information on TIC.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole article about this whole production or really just why am I forgetting it? It's
task
equipment.
It's equipment. So I'm a big gearhead, analog gearhead, and Terrace Martin and I share that passion. Terrace is just an incredible artist, and that one loss, that L that I took on my first bidding war that I went after, validated me. Because in front of everyone, one of the toughest executives. So my first big bidding war was an L. I took an L. I lost that bidding war, but that validated me because I'm thinking to myself, if I'm not that good, how the hell could I have identified how great Sycamore was? And how could I have identified this one artist? And even though True didn't get his chance, unfortunately, there was some unfortunate incidents, and he's amazing, God bless him. But due to that situation, both True Life and a legendary executive named Donnie Einer said to me, if you had to lose to somebody, you lost to Jay-Z. And I laughed because Hov probably has no idea who I am, but I guarantee you he'll remember this if he ever sees this interview. He'll go like, oh my God. And True remembers this. And because of True Life, that bidding war woke me up. It kind of got me out of my funk of being insecure about my pedigree of Beasties and knowing Rico Wade and knowing all that. And I said, okay, I'm at the wrong label, and I want to do this. And so when I literally that Russell Simmons quote, "Do what you love," I literally was like, I'm miserable at this major label. I'm losing my mind. I had a girl at the time I was really serious with. I wanted to get married. I was a kid. And I just was like, you know what? I want to go back to LA. I could cuss on this, right?
Yeah.
I was like, fuck this job. It's not about the money. I could get a normal job anyway and go back to San Gabriel Valley. Who gives a fuck? Fuck this job. I got a really great girl at the time. And I was like, I'm going to go back to LA. So I went back to LA with no job I never forgot, for 2 months. My dad was stressed. I was starting to get a little stressed. My mom was stressed. And I come back, I get a little apartment in Koreatown. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, what's next for me? And literally, it's all about relationships, something Xylo touched on. The head of A&R for Warner Brothers Records, Craig Aronson, God bless him, called me up, and he's tight with Naeem Ali. He worked with Orlando McGee. These are all people that Xylo has either interviewed or knows. Great A&Rs, great execs. And Craig Aronson, head of A&R, reached out to me and said, listen, do you want this gig? And I'm thinking, wow, I got to go do A&R for Warner Brothers Records. They had Prince, they had all these amazing artists. And he said, listen, we're going to sign, I'm the head of A&R, we're going to sign it together because I have to usher it in with you. But you got the shine. Like, these are your artists that you're going to bring in and you're going to be responsible for them. He was tough. I mean, Craig was an incredibly amazing exec. He passed away. God bless him, but it was like, I met him through the Beastie Boy days. And I thought he was amazing. And I thought, okay, he doesn't know the culture. He signed a lot of rock bands and a lot of alternative bands, but I knew I could bring him some hip hop. I knew
because that was the transition.
I knew I could bring him hip hop. I knew I could bring him alternative sounding hip hop and R&B artists because of who I was rolling with at the time. And if you look at the time, right, I mentioned a young Sycamore. This isn't name dropping. Sycamore would love this. He'll love this shout out because he's amazing. He's humble, but he really understands culture. He's a photographer on the side, as you all know. Amazing guy. So I go to Warner, and while I'm at Warner, shout out to another young A&R at the time who was working there as a marketing person, and he was an artist at the time, Tunji. So Tunji, so Tunji's a young marketing guy at the time. And I'm around all this amazing talent at Warner Brothers Records who went on to do bigger things. At the same time, Naeem Ali had signed an artist named J-Rock, who's one of my favorite artists. J-Rock, shout out to J-Rock. TDE, Top Dog, Punch, Soundwave, DJ Dave, who later became Dave Free, K-Dot, who is Kendrick Lamar. All these people were around us at that time, thanks to Naeem's signing of J-Rock. And when I was coming in, right, I'm coming in as a young grinder, coming straight from New York, figuring out what my first signing's going to be. I saw the world was changing, especially in Los Angeles. I saw, Snoop, always an incredible cultural icon, right? I saw what Terrace was building with Snoop. I saw that. I looked at Terrace as my Dre. I saw Terrace as somebody who could be a true architect of culture without having to conform to what was on the radio. So does that make sense? So I saw Terrace as somebody that...
Because he was a multi-instrumentalist that was extremely gifted. He could pick up any instrument and make it into a melody and make it into a harmony. I mean, no, of course. I haven't met Terrace Martin, but he has family. I did an event with Zakari in Bakersfield.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And so while we're doing the event with Zakari, it was called Keeping the Streets Warm. Fine. We're collecting jackets for the homeless people.
Dope.
Terrace Martin leaves on Zakari's page that, hey, my family's from East Bakersfield. And I'm like, holy shit, Terrace Martin's from his family's from Bakersfield?
Yeah. And
it was just like that awakening of like, bro, you're in California. Like, it's LA's.
We're all connected. We're all connected, man. No, we're all connected. And Terrace, funny enough, it all ties to that story. That question Xylo said is like, how did you validate yourself as an A&R? All of these steps that happened to me, losing the True Life bidding war, going to Warner, leaving
that loss to Jay-Z, I do gotta tell you, that wasn't a loss. It was a lesson.
It's a lesson.
It was a lesson of validation.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't know if you got the stuff until you throw it in the big leagues.
Oh yeah. No, it was like I went the distance, and I came out with some black guys, and I didn't get the decision, but I went in there and I hung tough, and I did what I had to do. But when I came back to LA, again, luckily I think it's we're very lucky to know who we know. you know, a young.
Blessed. Like,
very blessed.
actually, no, I take that
I wouldn't
back.
say lucky. Blessed is the word. Blessed. So just so y'all know, so what happens is I go to Warner, and when I'm there, Terrace is somebody that I absolutely believe that. I thought this is somebody who's a beacon to real music that touches my soul. A true beacon, right? And that just came to my mind right now. But that's what he was. And we grew up, he understood what Project Blowed was, which, you know, if you don't know what Project Blowed was, do your homework.
Educate yourself.
Educate yourself. We both came up going to shows at Leimert Park as kids. We both understood hip-hop. We loved hip-hop because it was the music of our time, right? But at the same time, he was trying to infuse incredible music that inspired him that wasn't just hip-hop into the music he was making. Snoop was obviously open to it. Snoop's an elevated character, you know, he's an elevated guy. He's obviously having Terrace around for a reason. And literally, how weird is this? So Terrace Martin makes this track that True Life, that got the buzz up for True Life, right? So I'm obsessed with Terrace Martin now. I'm thinking, he's the guy, right? So we go over to LA, and Craig is offering me this job to go to Warner Brothers Records as an A&R, to work directly for the head of A&R. I already know who Naeem is. I know who Orlando is, and I'm thinking this squad is fire. Like, these are great A&Rs. These are guys I can learn from. These are guys I can navigate with, and they're all eclectic. You know, they're all signing music of all different genres, and I'm thinking, man, I can learn a lot from these cats. While this is going on, my deal's not done yet as an A&R. My deal's like we're negotiating. So Terrace Martin calls me up and says, yeah, bro, I think I want to try to like figure out what I'm going to do next. And I'm thinking, you should put out a Terrace Martin album. You should have your own imprint and like sign all these developing artists.
Organically giving great advice.
Thank you. By accident. Think about that. Not by accident. But it's a blessing.
No, because you got to realize that your mind was already prepared if you got asked this question. If someone leaned on you for advice, you paid attention in all these other rooms so that you can spit it back out. I do it all the time.
Oh, yeah. It came out.
Ask me, and then...
Xylo, it just came out, bro. And you know what was crazy? He said to me, well, let's run it. Let's run it. I mean, he's listening. He's a very non-industry creative. So he's, you know, obviously Terrace has his guard up, you know, like a boxer. He's like, I like you, but business is, you know, I don't really like this industry shit. So I went to Craig and I said, Craig, meet Terrace Martin. Let's give him a song deal and an imprint to this young creative, and maybe he could tip us to these amazing artists he's around in LA. You know, he's touching every area in LA. Everyone respects him. Everyone, even from TDE to unsigned artists, all around these different areas in Los Angeles. If you all can read between the lines, this dude is just touching everyone, right? Production.
He's one of the few people where politics didn't play on his progress.
Not at all. So and he is. I mean, so I thought, okay, this is.
He's from South Central.
Yep, exactly. So for me,
East side.
So for me, I said to myself, if I get Terrace on, even if I don't get this Warner job, that's all that matters. I gotta help this artist. It was weird. It was the first time I ever felt driven and selfless. Whew. Driven and selfless. Where I even said, if I go back to San Gabriel Valley and my journey was just the Beastie Boys, Rico Wade, that's better than anyone could have imagined, bro.
Because that right there was your selfish moment of like, hey, I was able to see this get built, and I can go back and look at it at any point. Because of how selfless you were, you understood the value of your selflessness, because it was going to become selfish to seeing them blossom and groom.
That's exactly it. And I said, I'd rather just be a fan. And when that happened, Terrace called me and said, I think Craig wants to do this with me. I appreciate the opportunity. Craig called me, let's get you in the building. I got in the building. First artist we signed together, Terrace Martin. Then after that, Terrace started touching, you know, everyone's production within Warner. Naeem loved him. Orlando loved him. I loved him.
He could pick up on anyone's production.
Crazy. I mean, he could do something for Talib Kweli and then do something for J-Rock, right? So, like, it's like those... And you look at the dynamics of those two great artists, right? J-Rock, what he writes is...
Two different worlds.
I mean,
literally. New York, Watts.
Exactly, Watts. You know, Watts icon, you know? So you do something with him, right? So then all of a sudden you do something like that, right? So then all of a sudden I'm looking to see what's next, and a friend of mine, I'm in a studio, and a young drummer, a session player, tells me, bro, you should be tapping in with Jay Davey. And Jay Davey is, I think, you know, they're really really one of the most unsung heroes that a lot of people should do your homework on. Jay Davey. They're amazing. They were a duo, and they were making alternative music, alternative pop R&B music infused. But I tell you this group for a reason. Thundercat was the bass player in the band. That when they would play shows, Thundercat would come out and play with them. This is all of them coming up. Pac Division. All of these artists were coming up at this time. A young Dom Kennedy. All of these kids were around LA at this time. And it was magic. It was magic, bro. And I'm running around LA with Terrace Martin. I'm running around LA with Jay Davy. And Jay Davy's making this music that years later, a friend of mine named Yeti Beats, shout out to Yeti, he introduces me to a baby Doja Cat. And out of all the artists I've ever worked with, Doja Cat is excited about Jay Davy. And it makes sense because Doja, if you look at what she's become and what she grew up on, she's amazing. And she grew up on, you know, this almost alternative R&B music that I think Jay Davy embodied.
Jay Davy was like a West Coast Weekend before his time.
Way before its time. And I think, honestly, I'm blessed to have worked out the way it did because I look back that also validated what I was trying to push through. And
once again, your ear.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for saying that. And then all of a sudden, another validation is I meet a young Tunji, and Tunji comes up to me and goes, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. He'll even admit it. He said, I see what you're doing at this label. It's amazing. It's amazing what you're trying to sign or what you're trying to do. Because he understood. Think about this. He's a young artist. He just has no industry loyal, like he's not stuck on that industry vibe of trying to climb. He just wants to make music. He wants to work dope shit. Just very innocent and pure. You know what I mean? That was Tunji then and even now, continuing as an executive. Nice. You know, he's very pure and I want to make great music and he's not even editing himself. He just comes right up to me and I'm looking at Tunji like, wow, this guy's dope. You know, like what? So like,
but he recognized something that you had going.
Yeah.
In the music world, the most progress lies in when you break the rules. You look at the Beatles and how we have the bass. Bro. It took them to kick the damn bass speaker in. I mean, the guitar speaker, and that's how we got this bass sound that we use heavily in hip hop. But it comes from the Beatles. Nobody wants to talk about it.
No one talks about that. Yeah,
but it's the truth. Like,
no, it's the truth.
It wouldn't be this story.
No, I mean, you look at it's true. A lot of people don't. You know what I mean? Like,
and then look at what you were doing. You were not going against the grain. You were going against a part that they weren't cutting.
Yeah, exactly, bro. And thank you for saying that. And I was really not trying to chase. For me, I was trying to chase iconic artists because I knew when you chase iconic timeless iconic artists, when you chase those types of artists, the hits will come, right? The hits will come. You don't have to chase hits. You know what I mean? You chase hits, then something's wrong. You know what I mean? You chase iconic artists. You chase them, and those hits come to them. Those songs come to them.
Now, if you notice, we haven't even got into Wiz Khalifa, but I got to make sure that...
Yeah, we have enough time. Sorry. Yeah, there's a lot of...
No. I want to make sure we talk into how much East LA, San Gabriel Valley, you know, the home of Cypress Hill.
Oh, I'll show you. I'll tell you all that. Okay, so...
But no. Oh, yeah. No, I've had them on the show. I love Be Real. I've had Mellow Mayonnaise. I've had some beautiful situations. But a lot of people don't realize the influence on the sound because there's an alternative sound. There's a heavy rap sound. There's this gangster rap sound, and then there's this crazy R&B sound that's flowing through where a lot of people don't know LA or Compton was a home of rhythm and blues.
It's the home
on the West Coast.
But it's so smart, Zylo, you brought this up. So growing up in San Gabriel Valley, going to parties in East Los Angeles, and I'm not talking like Silver Lake or any of that shit. I'm talking real East LA, y'all. Like this is like real East LA. Like you got to be good to go in those areas, or at least with people to make sure you're good. When going there, yeah, you know, Be Real and those guys, I had so much respect. Growing up as a kid, it was a cross between skateboard culture, punk skateboard culture, hood, like I'm talking real hard cholo kids.
This is click era.
This is like click era. So you got skateboard punk era, and then you got hood ass fools that like really like, it was wild, like almost like Cypress Hill, Beastie Boys, that kind of music. It meshed. It had this really angsty, rebellious, fucked up reflection of what was happening at that time. Like Be Real, being this kid, he was really heavily influenced by the Beastie Boys from the nasal rap. A lot of people don't know this. He's a huge Beastie Boys fan because think about it, he's younger than them. So he grew up listening to these amazing artists, and the nasal rap that you all know is Be Real. When you guys like kind of like when everyone raps to Cypress Hill, that was influenced by Beastie Boys. He's obsessed with them. He loved them, and they loved him at that time. He was even on a remix for them for a song called So What You Want. But I think those cats moving around, right, and that music, growing up as a kid, I hung around skaters. I hung around punk kids. I hung around hip-hop heads. I hung around stoners. I hung around kids doing wild shit. And we all those two artists were literally in our DNA. Just because Cypress Hill, to us, they were local heroes. Rage Against the Machine, artists like that who, you know what I mean? All those artists were doing it. Far Side, Alcoholics, those were all artists popping in our areas that we just would listen to. But also there was even harder rap than that, like AMG and DJ Quick and Tonight.
Can't forget Second to None.
Yeah, exactly. But like listening to DJ Quick Tonight, that was an anthem for those areas. And there were rap kids playing it. You know what was funny is there were punk kids who listened to Dr. Dre and listened to The Chronic, because I think punk and hip hop always had this fuck you attitude. It always is youth driven. It always has this.
And you recognize it then, because now if you look at Playboi Carti, you look at Travis Scott, you look at these crazy mosh pits that are occurring from the music, and you don't, unless you're in the environment, you don't even know it's mosh music.
You don't even know it's mosh music, but it all is driven from that frustration and what it does. The synergy. You know what I mean? And then, and for me, growing up as a kid, I think that's why I related to Terrace so much, because I just thought he was a quintessential LA guy, but yet an infusion of jazz and hip hop and unapologetic, and just even though he wouldn't make a fast tempo record, if he it was still a fuck you attitude. I want to do what I want to do, and I loved it, and I was obsessed with it, and I think that's where Terrace, J. Davy, and then we could talk about Wiz, but that's how. But I'll tell you that journey of how what spawned Wiz and why I knew sonically Wiz was going to speak to a younger generation that I wasn't talking to.
We had this conversation on set like 2 weeks ago, and someone randomly was like, how the hell did Black and Yellow become such a phenomenal hit?
You know what's crazy? I'll tell you my journey of how I found him, and then this will probably answer the best way of why I think that later took off. You know what I mean? Like when I literally signed him to his first major label deal, it was funny. It was a twofold deal. It basically, I was at Warner. I already had J. Davy and Terrace signed. I was running around with Craig, and we were looking at different artists, and we wanted more artists. And I had made a compilation for Craig to listen to on a plane. And JJ, her name is Jennifer Justice. Shout out to Jennifer Justice, amazing, powerful female attorney. That's her name, Jennifer Justice.
Oh yeah, she means
shout out to JJ. But JJ and Benji Grinberg, a young executive at that time who was L.A. Reid's assistant, hardworking, wore his heart on his sleeve, hardworking guy, Pittsburgh guy, really down-to-earth cat. The two of them had a young artist, Wiz Khalifa, signed to Benji's imprint called Rostrum Records.
Right.
And Benji was running Rostrum out of his apartment. And you think about that, right? Somebody running a label out of his apartment, and he was shopping around a Wiz Khalifa deal with a project called Show and Proof. You could look this up. It's called Show and Proof. Show and Proof was dope. Show and Proof was dope. It was well crafted. Benji was involved with it. Shout out to E-Dan, ID Labs, Will, the original crew of Wiz Khalifa.
Taylor Gang.
Yep, the Taylor Gang. Shout out to Wiz Khalifa and Taylor Gang. All of them were very self-contained. Very similar. Like if you think about it, I think about it later, like a Terrace Martin or a J. Dave. They were all very self-contained artists. They had their own clique. They knew what they were doing, and they were young. They were in it. They were just in it. They understood sonics of the way they heard things. Wiz Khalifa had some demos. I met with Benji. Benji and I tapped in. We connected so heavy. I just thought Benji was somebody that was pushing music the way he saw fit. Maybe not what was happening at the time, but I just liked him. I just felt like, okay, this is somebody that I could tap in with. So I play it for my boss. He gets excited. I play it for a guy named Savalas Holloway. Savalas was a mix show guy. Check out this lesson I learned. He did mix show, radio. Savalas loved the record Say Yeah. It was a demo. Wiz Khalifa Say Yeah was a demo. It had a crazy LSDJ sample. And Savalas said to me, you know what, bro? I think this record is crazy. I played it for other people in the building. They thought the record was crazy. But Wiz didn't sound like anything happening at that time. Nothing. He was making his own music. ID Labs was making their beats the way they made them. It had this different sound, bro. I mean, think about it. It's Pittsburgh. No one... It was just different.
You know that the two biggest people involved in Dr. Dre's career that transitioned the West Coast sound?
Mailman.
From Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And also Butterman.
But yeah. No, it's crazy. So what happens is, I end up getting that demo, and more demos from Benji, and I fell in love with it. And I fly to go see Wiz Khalifa perform. And when I fly, I have food with him, his mom Peachy. Shout out to Peachy. She's amazing. Follow her on IG. She's great. So I sat with Peachy, Wiz, and Benji. We all ate, and I said, I gotta sign this dude. And I came back. I said, we gotta do everything we can to sign him. Other labels were looking, but no one really understood it. And we signed him. We put out Pittsburgh Sound. We put out Youngin' on His Grind, which did, we got a little buzz, and we took him, we were bringing Wiz from Pittsburgh to Burbank. That's where the Warner offices were at that time. Right. So I'm bringing him to Burbank. I'm introducing him to people. He's coming here a lot. I used to drive him down Melrose. He was a kid. He was in at the time I had a Nissan Pathfinder. It's fire. It was fire with a dope little system. I couldn't get that SGV shit out of my DNA, so I'm driving around with my Pathfinder doing A&R for Warner, and Wiz would top in the Pathfinder, and I'd take him down Melrose, and he was so wide-eyed. Think about this, this is a Pittsburgh kid, raised by his family, and just hardworking, killer in the studio, work ethic out of here, still is, but you're from Pittsburgh, and I'm taking you down Melrose. Think about what was going through his mind.
He was shellter shocked.
He was probably tripping. So he's going down there. We're setting up studio sessions. Pack Division's pulling up. Different kids in LA moving around are pulling up. I introduce him at Terrace. Things are going, he's just moving, cutting records with Benji and ID Labs. And we put out Pittsburgh Sound, which I thought was a dope record. And then all of a sudden, it was time to put out Say Yeah. And we dropped Say Yeah. And I just knew the label didn't get it. I fucking knew it. I was like, the label doesn't get it, but the record's a hit, and they're not gonna know how to work it. And Benji was a savage. He knew the same thing too. So I hit up Sour Milk at Power 106. Shout out to LA Leakers. Sour Milk. This is a true story. Sour Milk will validate it. And Sour Milk leaked Say Yeah on the radio. He was the first DJ on the West Coast to play Wiz Khalifa. And Sour Milk played Say Yeah, hit the record. Ben Madahi and Mike Karen were early fans of Wiz from what I was doing with Wiz. And all of a sudden, Felly Fell, who was tapped in with Ben Madahi, hit the record as well. And everyone, all the juniors at Power 106 who are now the kings of Power, all those kids, Sour Milk, Justin, all those kids, at the time too, DJ Reflex, shout out to DJ Reflex, early on Wiz with me. All these younger guys were playing Wiz. They were stamping it. They were like, it's the shit. Because if you think about it, they caught the Sonics. They thought it was different. It wasn't just Soulja Boy Craig that. It wasn't. It was something different, and it was coming out at the same time. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was going. It was moving.
And he was sticking like his weed. He was very sticky with his content. It stuck with you.
Mm-hmm. He was one of the first kids, and this is also shout out to Jacory, my homie, and shout out to Brandon and all the early cats that supported Wiz. Benji and Wiz, all of those cats were so early on MySpace. Wiz was always feeling himself, handsome dude, good looking dude, on MySpace, laughing, the whole shit with the fly look. And he's young, he's 18, 19, he's fly as hell, and he's just dope looking. He looks like, I'll be honest with you, when having Terrace and a Jay Davy and then signing Wiz in my roster was the ultimate pop star. You feel what I'm saying? He was the rock star. He was the rock star out of all of them because of how young he was. He was younger. He was 18, 19. He was speaking to a much younger audience that are now in their 30s, late 20s and 30s now, who now grew up with Wiz, right? So we blow up Say Yeah, and all of a sudden the label doesn't believe in it. They're not fully backing it. We're leaking the record. We're making a buzz. I introduced him to Terrace. Terrace Martin sets up a session at Record Plant. They're at Record Plant, and Terrace Martin makes a play that was so wild. It was by accident. It truly was by accident, but not really as fate would have it. Nothing's by accident. Wiz Khalifa is in a room with Terrace, and in comes Snoop, and Terrace Martin introduces Wiz and Snoop. And to validate it, I texted Wiz, and he goes, I can't believe you were in that room. He's become one of my best friends. And I think at that moment, a young Wiz Khalifa, who was still developing his sound and himself as a man, think about it, these are formative years. He's the same age at this point that I was when I met Mike D, right? So Mike D shapes who I am as a man, right? Or the Beasties do. And I think Wiz looked at Snoop and said, that's the template. That's the blueprint. I've never asked him this. I don't know if he'd ever, maybe it's a series of things, but if you look at, the reason why I say it like this is this. I asked somebody, I said, where do you see Snoop? And where do you see Wiz? And they said, Snoop's a forever legend and icon. And this cat I was talking to was younger, and he said, but Wiz is my generation Snoop.
True.
Do you get what I'm saying?
True.
So he goes, you had Snoop, like I had Snoop. And he goes, but Wiz is my Snoop. Wiz is my iconic legend, too. Even though...
In that same sentence, you got to think about Willie Nelson. You got to think about...
Well said.
Cypress Hill. You got to think about Snoop.
Yeah.
And then there was like pretty much a fall off. There was some people promoting it, but more people were afraid to have their brand messed up and well, you know, fall face forward.
Yeah.
Instead of, hey, embarking on it and realizing that there is a whole bunch of people that indulge.
Yep. And to answer that last question, why it all, I'm going to bring it all back to why Black and Yellow blew up. What sadly, the label didn't believe in Wiz, and Wiz knew he was a star. Benji believed in him. I believed in him. Will, who now manages him, believed in him. We all did. And I think what happened was the label didn't believe. And sadly, there were layoffs. I was affected in the layoff at Warner. Wiz parted ways with Warner. He stayed loyal. He kept his head down. He put out mixtapes using probably a lot of the demos he had crafted during that time. And he exploded on Rostrum and then got signed to Atlantic. But it taught Wiz, think about it, that L that people thought Wiz took with Warner getting, well, I don't even think he was dropped. Some people could say Wiz was dropped. No. Wiz and Warner parted ways, and that L that maybe Wiz thought he took at that time was a lesson because he became an entrepreneur. Taylor Gang. He started his own label.
Right.
His branding. I mean, the kid.
And then he went independent.
He went independent.
Made a stronger stride forward.
And now.
And then he did it when the Steelers went to the Super Bowl.
And then Black and Yellow. So this all the foundation that I was a part of, really shaped my career. Continued to validate me as an A&R. Say yeah as a gold plaque, if not more. So I did have a hit with Wiz. I did sign him. I was his first A&R, and I love him. And I think for me, it validated to what I would do in the future.
So as you've been able to really curate the sound of one that's coming out the labels, and your stamp, two, you're really the person that's identifying what the game is missing. You're filling a void.
Thank you.
And by you recognizing those pieces, it gave you little testimonial runs to be able to apply your knowledge and grow from it. And so it's like, what do you look for in artists? You know, you got a great team with CB. Shout out CB.
Charles CB Burks. Shout out to my brother.
Absolutely. And, you know, you guys have been able to find some really young talent that's been, one, fresh on the scene, fresh breath of air, but two, changing the, you know, how we view LA artists or how we view West Coast. You look at Kyle Banks, KB. I don't know why I was thinking of K-Camp because of For You, but
I love that song.
Yeah. Hey, I got to go to Atlanta and be a first ever production manager with a major label was through Red Bull Records. You know, I gotta make sure I give you guys that. And shout out Paul
Wright. Paul Wright's amazing. No, I think you're saying it great. I think how it gets our okay. So I'll give you a quick example. At this stage in my life, you have to trust your team. You have to. I think it you know, you gotta still be in the trenches, and do it as partners. Charles C.B. Burks, to me, I met him three and a half years ago, and for me, I felt he was an extension of what was happening in the world, like just culturally. He's tapped in. He came from club promoting as a kid. He came from apparel. He loved apparel. He loved music. He loved, you know, he actually came from writing music as a fan. And I think the beautiful thing about CB, to be blunt, I didn't even plan on getting into all this, but I could say it quick because it ties into how we find artists. CB came from like me, an intern to working in tough major label environments to coming to Red Bull Records, because we were both like-minded. We had both been through the trenches, and he was a former athlete who's taken some big hits, you know, mentally tough because of football. College football is fucking bananas, and you can imagine being at a major label at a young age. You're taking a lot of mental hits as well, right? So that's kind of tough. But he spoke from the heart, and he really trusted what he loved. Even if there'd be moments where I think even he questioned himself, am I sure about this one? But he really trusted his heart. He really trusted his gut. So I think when I needed to expand this team, CB was the natural hire to bring in, at first as director of A&R, now VP as A&R, because Blxst was signed innocently. We did that together, and the way we did it was he fell in love with Blxst music. You know, we loved Bino, we loved Bozo, we loved the production. But think about this. When you build a team, they have to bring things that maybe you're not on, right? So CB said, you got to listen to this guy Blxst. I was in his car. My car was getting fixed, and CB had played me Blxst music and said, I think we should really look into Blxst. How crazy is that? That's how it really happened. And very innocently. It wasn't stats. It was just pure love for Blxst, what he was creating as a writer, producer, artist, right? Which is rare. You get what I'm saying?
I'm sorry, it's so crazy because as you said this, I'm thinking of Jazz Prince's story when he's trying to get Drake signed by Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
And it's each time he goes and picks up Lil Wayne, he's driving, he plays Drake's music. First time he doesn't get it. The second time he doesn't get it. The third time he's like, who the hell is that?
Well, you know, it's all about, but luckily CB and I have such a crazy rhythm. I would say CB and I are so in rhythm. We could talk any time of day, and I'm so locked in with him. Even if I'm not on or he's been up late, we just kind of know. We kind of can read each other. Chemistry. That better word for it. Chemistry. So he tells me, he's like, maybe. So I go home and I do my research, and we meet with these guys, Vic Burnett, shout out to Vic, Eagle, and I meet with Blxst, with CB in the conference room in this building, and these guys pull up in matching Dickie suits and. And they're real LA kids, you know, but old souls and great guys. And I meet them and I'm like, wow, but they're so, I'm telling you, buttoned up. I wouldn't just say this. Even if I didn't work with them, I would say this. They were so buttoned up with their vision of what they wanted. Vic is an unbelievably
visionary,
calculated, and smart executive. And when I say calculated, in all the right ways. He's thinking 5 steps ahead of everyone, and he's extremely smart. One of the smarter execs in the business that I've met in recent years.
Vic his flowers because we talk about this all the time. We talk about LA artists, and when they make the wrong decision to get the wrong members on their team, and how their career doesn't take off the way how certain people are. And it's just amazing how Vic found Blxst inside of a studio.
Oh, Vic's a genius.
And, you know, he was like, oh, that's you too? You just not making the beats? And he's in here every day?
Yeah. So Vic, yeah, exactly. You nailed it. So Vic is, he would be embarrassed if I said this, but it's all good. I could say it. He won't say it about himself. I think he's an amazing executive. I think when CB turned me on to this music, I became blown away. Because I was thinking to myself, number one, I trust CB immensely, his ear. I knew what it was. And even if I wasn't sure about it, I would still trust CB. But what got me on this was, I listened to it, I saw what Blxst was touching, I saw how excited CB was, I started talking to people, and I saw what Blxst was building. And I was like, this is moving in a really special way. Whether it happens now or later, it will happen, right? And CB, being somebody that really knows when he's got me, he knew. He was like, let's go, let's run it. And he super tapped in with what he believed was going to be the next wave. I trust CB, and then he bought, you know, he sold me on it, and I'm like, I'm in. So then now we got to go fight for it with our boss and say, well, you know, it's not easy when you sign something. You got to convince a lot of people, because think about when you sign an artist, it's your job on the line. I don't care what people say. You got a clock, and it's your job on the line. And we convinced our boss that Blxst was amazing, and it happened, and we did this deal, and thank God we have great management in Vic. Shout out to Allison. They have a female GM who is, I think that story needs to be told because I think her story is powerful. I think she is an extension of all things Vic, and she's different in the sense that, think about this, like I come from traditional music business, right? So watching how Eagle moves and the way Blxst and Carl and Vic have set up this company, a female GM, shout out to Erin, who's an incredible creative mind. Shout out to every one of them on Eagle because and a big shout out, I think his story is powerful as well. Carl Folks, who's the attorney for Blxst, he's a professor at Drexel, and he's young, and he's a killer exec, always thinking, charismatic, and that's the amazing thing about Eagle. They're all charismatic. You could sit with any of them, and they could all light up a room just by their energy and their focus. And even when they think and they're very I think what's amazing about they're very, I mean, I know Blxst always says forever humble, which is great because he embodies that. But his team does too. His team is very humble. I don't think they always know how powerful the narrative is because they are so humble. Does that make sense? I think they'll learn it in time when their story is told. They'll look back and say, my God, we did all that. You know what I mean? But it's amazing to see. Do you get what I'm saying?
No,
because they're young, you know, they're building it but they're old souls, so they're building something really magical, and really amazing with Eagle. Carl is incredible. He's based in Jersey. Alice and Aaron, they have Direct Devin, who's an incredible content maker. Everything from videos to photos. Peru, legendary LA guy moving around taking pictures of cats. You know, they got a group of people around them that I think has really helped shape everything. And then, you know, think about it for CB and I at Red Bull Records. It goes all back to the question of, you know, this question you asked me of how does it get to CBs and our radar? You think about it like this: most A&Rs are running stats. They're looking at stats. They're chasing TikTok. They're doing that. I get it, but there's a reason why I'm where I'm at this label, and there's a reason why I'm at this label in particular. Same thing with CB. CB's a killer. You know, he could be at any major label he wanted to if he wanted to. He chooses to be at Red Bull Records, and I choose to be at Red Bull Records, and I can't speak for him, but I'll say this about myself. But I know he's very loyal, as I am as well. But we need to be at a place that trusts our ear and trusts our guts and trusts us. You know what I mean? So a lot of our signings aren't based on stats. A lot of our signings are based on our belief, our heart, and our ear that these artists are going to make a cultural footprint. Does that make sense? So
absolutely.
So shout out to Greg Hammer.
I like how you said footprint because a lot of, you know, in the music world, you go inside the studio, engineers or a label head, they're looking for that signature sound.
Oh, of course, yeah.
They're looking for that artist that, hey, at this BPM or tempo and on this key, they created a signature, and that thing drove the song beyond normal competition. And you said it where it wasn't necessarily a signature. It's the same thing. It's an imprint. Because like at the end of the day, you have to be a brand that could be identified without seeing it. If I hear it, I see the person.
Well, it's, you know, I love that you said this. You see, so now like you listen to Blxst, right? People listen to Blxst. You could hear it. You could see Blxst. I think Eagle, they're gonna sign many artists in many genres. I could already tell where.
Shout out J Million.
That's what I was getting at. Blxst. He is an incredible thinker, an incredible producer and artist. But what's amazing about him, I see him growing into an incredible executive producer. His ear is incredible. And, you know, and all of them are. Like, if you look at all of their ears at Eagle, Allison has an engineering background. Vic has a marketing background, right? Very like just laser fucking sharp marketing background, but knows music. Knows content, knows the way things should look and sound, right? Aaron, the way it looks. Direct Devin, they know the way it looks. They're all music fans though, right? Check this out. Check out where I'm going with this. Blxst, music fan. You look at what they're signing next, right? A J Million, and you look at J Million, and this is a 19-year-old artist, a young man who can touch any instrument and play it. And weirdly enough, I'll tell you a funny J Million story that'll blow your mind.
I got one for you too.
Yeah, so I go, Blxst is an amazing artist that we're able to, work with and be able to talk to all the time. And he has this young artist, Jay Million, around. Now, CB has met Jay Million around a bunch, right? And I hadn't met Jay Million yet. So I go up to this house that Blxst was writing music in. He was writing music for both Would Be Sixtape and Would Be a few other records. And he's making all this music 24 hours a day in this house. And I show up at the house, and Blxst is probably taking his first.
You got Terrace Martin with you, right?
Yeah, I pull up exactly. I pull up and I meet Terrace there, and Terrace is my brother, and we purposely, we time it out.
This is Dreamville writing camp type stuff that Blxst was doing.
Yeah,
sidebar.
It was magic, right? So we're in an amazing house. It's Malibu. It's out of here. And CB opens the door for me, and he's like, "Man, it's great. The vibe's great." And I'm like, "It's great to hear, He's excited. I look around, Vic's like excited. Everyone's excited. Carl, Allison, everyone, Aaron, everyone's just pumped. And then what happens is everyone goes to the other room, because you could tell, I think they had been working so nonstop. I don't think Blxst had taken a break that day. So you could see Blxst and everyone kind of leave the room to go get something from the kitchen. And I'm standing there, and Terrace comes up to me. And before that, Blxst had told me, "Yeah, I got this, this guy, Jay Million, who's like amazing. You should pay attention to him," in his very calm, collective way. And I listened to Blxst. I was like, dope, but I didn't hear the music. I didn't know who Jay Million was. I just figured this is a dude that he works with, right? And because Blxst, has a lot of amazing creatives around him. So I'm like, who is this, right? Like, who is this guy? So they're all in one room. I walk over. Of course, I got to speak to my brother Terrace. So Terrace and I pull up on the side. And Terrace is always aware of his surroundings. Always. It's a knack he has. He knows everything. He studies everyone in the room. He knows everyone's. It's almost like he assesses everyone's position.
It's a survival factor.
Probably without even realizing how fast his brain. It's almost collecting data. Boom, boom, boom. This is so. So all of a sudden he looks at me. He goes, "What's up, Tick? How are you?" Blah blah. We're talking, and he goes, "Hey, you should really pay attention to this kid. Are you loving the music?" I said, "Yeah, the Blxst music sounds amazing." And he says, and I said, "Yeah, CB's playing me a bunch of music. It's magic." And he goes, "Bro, you should. There's a kid Blxst has in there. Pay attention to him, man. He's in there, tuning the guitar or playing with his guitar, and his name's Jay Million." And I'm like, so Terrace tells me this, and I'm like, wait, what? So that's the second time I heard the name. So first I hear from Blxst, and I hear from Terrace, but Terrace had just met him. And I walk in the room. No one's in the room. It's just Jay Million sitting on the floor, noodling around with the guitar, playing with the guitar. And I look at him. I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, "Hey, what's up?" We shake hands. And I'm like, this kid, there was something just about that moment that I'll remember for a long time, that
he was sitting there glowing.
He was sitting there touching this instrument, looking for a sound that inspired him. And later on, we did, CB and I and Vic hosted an A&R dinner with Blxst. It was just A&R driven. We were just talking about what we were into, what we were signing. It was Aaron and Allison there. We were just talking, and Blxst said something really amazing that you always look for as as any executive does, right? You look for your artist or your executives that you work with to be very clear on why they want to do something. Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
So you want clarity from yourself too. You want to be able to articulate why you want to sign something. CB wants to articulate why he wants to sign something, why something hit our radar, why we want to sign a Kyle Banks, why we want to sign a Peter Son, why we want to sign a Wondergirl imprint. Those things all come into play. But what Blxst said, I thought was so pure. He said, "I really believe in Jay Million because he pushes me to be better." And I'm thinking, so think about this. This is now a great artist like Blxst saying that this young 19-year-old is pushing him to be better. Blxst is still young. So you're thinking, like in my head, I'm thinking of it like athletes, like steel sharpens steel. So it's almost like if Blxst is a boxer, he's sparring with this kid.
Do you know, okay, so this is where I get to give you my part of the story.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because just like I said earlier, the old head doesn't want the young head coming in here and making me look bad. Versus there's a blessing in disguise of recognizing that this young head is going to put me on point with everybody else. And he's making me just as passionate as he is to compete.
Exactly.
So you get the grade out of everybody. So I interviewed Jay Million. Shout out Jay. We've done a few videos together.
Love that.
Love his energy.
Shout out to Jay Million.
He has this, like, I used to call it a dark Blxst sound. As in, he would tell dark stories where he's giving, you know, himself. He's given his testimonies of his relationships, things he's been through, Long Beach to Lancaster, and the diversity of going through that. And he's putting it all on wax. And he's making the entire sound around it. And what he told me was, I was like, how'd you give a Blxst? He said he spammed his DM.
So I never knew that.
He hit his DM every day and sent him stuff. And it came to a point where Blxst was like,
that's crazy.
I gotta look at this. And he was blown away. And then they connected, and they've been building ever since. And then
I never knew that. That's crazy. I mean, I love hearing that story because it's no different than us, all of us pushing as interns, all of us pushing. You know, Jay Million, it's funny. I get it now. You think, look at these two powerful spirits, right? A Blxst and a Terrace Martin, seeing something in Jay Million, right?
They're seeing themselves in him.
Exactly. And for Terrace, like, think about it. Of all the things that was going on in that house was magic. But Blxst is making great music. CB and I are hanging. It just, the energy was on high levels. You could feel the frequencies in that house. And then check this out. Well, Terrace looks at me and goes, "Yeah, you should pay attention to that kid in there." And I'm looking at it because Terrace knows I'm still that hyper tick. You know, my wheels are moving. I'm thinking a mile a minute. So for him to tell me, "Chill, go check out this kid," I thought that was interesting, right? And then I go and see him, and later now Jay and I have become close friends, and I love him, and I think he's got a bright future, bro.
As we're all positive lights in the world, and we try to give off that aura, there's things that dim that light, dim that aura.
Of course.
And there's this ability, and it hit me as I said it, and it's like, okay, I got to bring this back. There's a whole value of seeing yourself and your most courageous values in yourself that you see in other people that you want to build with. If you couldn't read me and say that, hey, he's just as passionate as I am, you probably wouldn't be sitting down with me.
I didn't even think about that. You're right.
You look for things to identify what's real in somebody.
You do.
And then you look for, okay, they're just as passionate. That was another confirmation that, okay, or, hey, I feel leery from the jump from somebody. And then you look for what made you feel leery.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? It's crazy. It's, you know, there's people that are my contemporaries that I came up with in the business that people always ask, like, Tick, how come you haven't worked with so-and-so? And it's like, it wasn't in the cards. It wasn't, I didn't feel. It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be. Either I felt leery or it just wasn't something that needed to happen. And then later on it does. Let's say, helping artists with great narratives like a Blxst. Think about this. He's a label partner now. He has his own partnership with Red Bull Records, with Eagle, and Eagle is an incredible company with Vic, Carl, and Blxst all as partners, making this company happen, with signings happening. Right, they're signing artists. They have Allison as a GM, Aaron, Direct Devin. All these people around them, DJ Phil, shout out to DJ Phil, Jay Million, like, it's like they have all these people around them, and for me, being able to be a part of that with CB, after all this long journey that I've had in my life, it's a blessing. I swear to God, it's a blessing. I think of when I go to an Eagle show, or I'm in an Eagle meeting, and hearing them talk, and hearing them all talk about the business, it's, to me, it gives me life. It does. I'm not being corny. It really does. I mean,
no, it's a full circle of your progression.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there watching this next wave. Like, I see it probably, and I'm not, no disrespect to anyone, I see it in such a heavy way.
You've seen it in real time.
And you know what? Thank you. Because one thing I wrote and somebody didn't understand, if you go on my Instagram, I write history in real time. And I remember when I said that, a few of them in Eagle kind of smiled because it resonated with them, because they are witnessing history in real time. And as they get older, luckily they all came up in social media, and so they can document it. But they'll see, in 10 years, they'll understand the impact that Eagle is making right now at this very moment. And the kids, they're inspiring right now. There's a 15, 16-year-old kid right now saying, I want to have my own imprint partnership. I want to have using the words partnership. I mean, these are words that no one used 10, 15 years ago.
They made a lot of things that people dismissed as uncool cool.
Oh yeah.
They made people recognize, hey, if you're smart, there's a value in that.
Well said.
Hey, if you treat people well, there's a value in that. If you have integrity, there's a value in that. If you are loyal, instead of trying to push fake love, there's value in that.
Yeah.
And that's something that propelled them. But as much as I love talking about Blxst and Eagle, because I know that this is it's definitely a branch of your success. Because you know, as you greenlight things, that puts the wave of that energy coming in the building.
It does,
and it just becomes a elusive amount of access points of where people can look at it, reference, and succeed. There's artists right now, as you said, that are going directly off of Blxst's movements. Blxst came during COVID, and
it's a blueprint.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a blueprint.
I mean, you guys use old school ways. You guys pushed the EP for 6 months, 8 months, and then dropped the deluxe, and then pushed Chosen for another 6 months, and then it hit TikTok, and then it went Urban Radio #1, and then it went Billboard Heat Seeker.
It
was just a build up, but you guys didn't dismiss your gut. You guys didn't say that, hey, this record right here, it has Tyga, it has Ty Dolla $ign, and I heard how you laugh. And I'm
laughing because all roads, listen, it's a testament how great Blxst is as a writer, as an artist, and making. And I laugh because it's a testament that goes back to the music, right? You have to shout out to Blxst, shout out to the music, but also it's a testament to all parties involved. Eagle and Red Bull Records always never give, they never give up on it. If you look at the history of Red Bull Records, it never gives up. It keeps sticking by artists for as long as it can, to as long as it possibly can.
Red Bull is definitely, and I'm not saying just because I'm here, Red Bull has definitely done an incredible job getting into the culture. And it's just not one facet of the culture. It's every facet possible.
Yeah.
And they're not saturated either.
Yeah. They're
doing it where it's a great blueprint of, hey, if there's companies that want to jump into a lane, this is definitely a way you want to do it. How you want to transfer the heat from where you got. Can you imagine, I'm just saying hypothetically, if Pepsi would have transferred their heat into the entertainment world outside of just
Super Bowl. Thought about it like that. Yeah.
Versus Red Bull was able to transfer their heat from a beverage standpoint in energy world into outdoorsmen and they just won the Grand Prix to you have the label now. You have so much where it's spread across the board.
Yeah. I mean, what's funny you said that. I can't really speak too much of, I can't speak on the brand, but I could tell you from Red Bull Records perspective, you saying that Greg Hammer, they have in the comment, shout out to Greg, he said he feels like the luckiest guy every day to come here and run the company, right? And it's funny, I thought he, sometimes when label heads say that, you wonder if they really feel it, and I know he feels it. I talk to him every day.
It's authentic.
It's authentic. He feels it. He drives into work every day. He's excited. We're not driving to an office, but he's driving, doing his meetings and doing what he needs to do every day. And it is magic to hear somebody say it and actually believe it. To, from the team members like Paul and Fiona, everyone here, right? You just kind of think about it and you're like, wow, we're lucky to have a very small but nimble team that works hard.
What is one thing you take away from each day that you clock in and you give yourself to this industry?
Can you say that one more time?
What is one thing you take away each day after you clock in and give yourself to this industry?
I think to myself at least once a day that I was wrong to think we're not saving lives. I swear to God, I think that. Because I think we save lives every day with the music.
Amen.
I think we do. I think a kid who's having a horrible life experience might listen to a J Million or a Blxst or a Wondergirl or one of her signings or an Aces or a Gavin or any of these artists we have on the roster.
Sad Alex.
All of them. Sad Alex, all of them. You go through it, Pineapple City, Kofi, just any of these artists, right, that we have, those artists touch people. Like I could tell you from experience, the Aces say where Gavin says they get people DMing them, telling them your music's changed my life, or when Aces get somebody DMing them saying, I'm going through something, and they're talking to them. Also one of this one artist that I think really embodies that is Beartooth. A heavy band, Caleb, who has put his heart and soul into his music, bleeds on every song. Beartooth, Caleb says that kids, it got heavy for him because kids were saying, "Hey, bro, I'm in my house. I'm going through hell. I need help, but your music is getting me through it." Right? So you hear these things and you're like, I used to think like, "Oh yeah, man, I could just tap out sometimes because we're not saving lives," and it's like, no, bro, I don't want to tap out. I don't feel like I need to. And also, I do feel like we're saving lives because I think about, had I not heard as a kid Cypress Hill and Beastie Boys and those songs, I probably would have ended up working or being in, following a job and stayed in that area that I couldn't get out of at that time. And that music propelled me to get out of that area.
Music is medicine, but the therapy that you receive from it is on your own discretion.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be therapeutic to what you digest. The same way how you eat. You eat toxic things, your body's going to dislike it later on. And, you want to make sure you absorb the right music.
Mm-hmm.
And, you find the stuff you relate to that you can feel good about. Because everything at the end of the day, you want to feel good. The goal of living is to be happy. Find a way to be happy.
Yeah. Because
that's where the most advantageous opportunities come alive.
Yep. I appreciate that. That's where I love that. I love that you said that. Appreciate it.
It just came off the fly.
True.
As you know, the show's powered by Snoop Dogg. I wouldn't be able to do so much of what I've been able to do with my own career without Dogg and Bobby D. I like to ask every guest, what's your favorite Snoop Dogg memory, whether it's in person or his music?
I think my favorite Snoop Dogg memory, funny enough, is when I saw him in the room with Terrace Martin, speaking of Wiz.
Yeah, that was iconic.
That was iconic. I witnessed that, and you should definitely talk to Terrace and